What, if any, legal repercussions exist for teachers who lie to parents of students who have an IEP or 504? Any lie that would impact the student's services. An example might be along the lines of Johnny doesn't need an OT because his scores in the assessment show he is doing just fine. Nothing. Sorry. Now, when you say legal repercussions, let me go ahead and back that up. The legal repercussions would actually fall upon the LEA. It would fall upon the institution as the public school system. It wouldn't fall upon the individual OT for making a bad call. I mean, you call it lying, and yes, I call many things that happen inside these meetings lies, but yet they're easily shrouded in various forms of justification that they were interpreting based upon their understanding or knowledge, that it wasn't necessarily malicious. And so this comes to the aspect within the IDEA, okay, within special education law, that's there. There is a provision in there that holds the individual blameless if the child isn't making progress toward IEP goals or toward services, meaning that there's no liability there for the individual, that there's no guarantees. Now, you put in here, well, what if they're intentionally lying? Well, prove that. Prove that they're lying, because there's in these areas it's so easy because it's not a black and white law. None of them are when it comes to this kind of stuff. So we do seek opinions, we do seek professional viewpoints, and those teachers have got to be protected in conveying those. It may not be correct. And yes, they may have pressure exerted upon them by administration, but is it individually liable or is it illegal? Is it, of course you'd sit there and say, well, I don't want them to act like that. Of course nobody wants them to act like that. And many people that are related service providers or even our education people will tell you that they feel like they're damned if they do and damned if they don't, because of the pressures exerted on both ends by some parents, but mostly by their administrative heads, that before your meeting ever starts, the whoever the LEA, whoever the special education director or supervisor has already given them their marching orders with regards to what they can, what they cannot say, and what they are wanting to happen during the meeting. And so it puts many of our educators and related service providers in a very, very rough spot, because they need a paycheck too, and they need to provide for their families. And they don't want a miserable working environment. Is that an excuse? No, it's not. It's reality. I'm not providing an excuse there. But at the same time, the shoe is not on that other foot. You're on a parent perspective. And I always try to acknowledge, that not everybody has the same personality as James Galini, because I'm like a bull in a china shop, and it just doesn't bother me. But I don't sit there and go, well, that teacher should stand up. Should she? Or should he? They don't have the same personality. The other thing is that they've got little kids. They've got a kid with an IEP in the very school system that they're teaching in, which is an insane set of components. I mean, so I'm realistic about these kind of things, guys. And we've just got to learn to navigate around that. But is there any legal repercussions for the individual for these kind of things? Well, no, because I've already explained it. There's just so many ways to approach it, and so many ways to justify it, and so many ways to hide it and shroud it, that it's not necessarily a lie in many, many instances. It just is. Now, what do you do about it? Like I said, this falls back on the institution. And this is where consensus on the IEP team is important. And if you don't have consensus, and that's where independent evaluations come in. Because if the OT comes in and says, well, I don't think that OT services would be beneficial, then trigger an independent paid for by the school system with an OT that you choose. And then if the school system still will not provide those services, then file due process or file for mediation or ask for facilitated IEP meeting or file a state complaint or file an OCR complaint. All those mechanisms are there, guys, to sit there and right this ship. Because there's a lot of pressures exerted over here, and you're going to get lies and you're going to get deceptions. It's going to happen. The difference is, what are you going to do about it as a parent? And what proof do you have to show that it's a lie or that it's a deflection or it's an attempt to screw your child out of services? What hard evidence do you have to support that? And then once you have that hard evidence, what are you going to do about it? Because unless you trigger one of the dispute resolution options, then you tacitly agree. And then there is consensus on the team. I have parents all the time that are like, oh, I've hated his IEPs for years. Oh, well, yeah, okay, well, did you do anything about it? Well, no, because then you're no different than them. Allowing the pressures and threats of government or your fear of taking that next level of advocacy, you're no different than the OT that was afraid to be honest. Because everybody is uncomfortable with fighting government. I used to be uncomfortable with, but it's just second nature for me now. I just don't care. They don't have some magic power, guys. I mean, I used to sit there and wonder when I first started, how this was going to pan out, fighting government. But I have been so underimpressed. It's just not that tough. It's not scary. It's fully and wholly incompetent. It doesn't know what it's doing. But those are the realities. That unless a parent triggers the dispute resolution options, but only if you can't base it upon guesses and hunches. You need evidence. You need supporting data. Now, if you can't get that through the evaluations or what the school's producing, go out and get your own. And then once you get your own, then you combat the lies. But all of those things that these individual decisions made by these professionals falls back on the school. And the school has to answer for the lies and for the misdirection and the failure to provide your child a FAPE. That falls on the public school. They have to own what the decisions of their employees are. Okay? But they're not held individually liable under this law, under IDEA, in a lot of ways under 504. As long as it's not shocking the conscience and it's not abusive, I'm talking about extremes. If it's just programming stuff, then no. I mean, it's in the law. They're not held individually liable for failures in the IEP. The institution is.